Good morning or good afternoon, it's Miss Bauer again, and today we're going to dive into some word problems regarding surface area and volume. Now, typically problems like this, word problems, won't quite tell you whether they want you to find surface area or volume, but they will give you some clues. So remember that surface area is always units squared, or they'll say squared units, and that volume is always units cubed, or sometimes they'll say like cubic units. Now, some other clues for volume is you might see the word fill, or it will say air or water or the inside. Those are all clues that mean volume. Now, surface area might say something like paint, wrap, labeling. All of that is surface area. So as we're going through these problems today, hopefully you'll start figuring out what shape it is. Are we finding surface area or volume? And then just using our formula to go from there. So this first problem talks about if 1 centimeter cubed of iron has a mass of 7.52 grams, what is the mass of an iron bar of a rectangular cross-section with the dimensions shown? Okay, using our picture, if we take a look at this, I can tell it's a rectangular prism, right? They said cross-section, they're just saying like this is a cross-section for whatever they're going to build with it. So as I can tell, this is a rectangular prism, and then they talked about mass, iron, but they said centimeters cubed, which is our clue that this would be a volume problem. That's our clue right there, this would be volume. So I'm always going to start out by figuring out the shape, volume or surface area, and then writing our formula. So we figured out the shape was a rectangular prism. We know that it's volume, and our volume formula for rectangular prism would be capital BH. Now, remember that capital B stands for the area of the base, and for rectangular prisms, that base is always on the bottom. So, to find capital B, to find the area of the rectangle that's on the bottom, I'm going to multiply 1.7 times 120, and that's going to tell me the area of the base. So, that would be 204. So over here, the volume, the area of the base was 204. And then from bottom to top, it is really hard. This is a very small height, but it's 3.2. So now I'm going to find out what's 204 times 3.2. And I get a volume of 652.8. Now, that's centimeters cubed, but this problem asked for the mass of the iron bar, and it said that 1 centimeter cubed has a mass of 7.52 grams. Now, for some of you with science, maybe you remember this, maybe not, but we can actually set up proportions to find our missing values. If you're having a hard time remembering, like, do I multiply or do I divide? And I don't know if you had to do like this with your units, and then you had to figure out like which one you multiply, all of that. So all I know is that I want to find the mass. So I have 652.8 centimeters cubed, and I want to know the mass, so over x. And I know that 1 centimeter cubed, so match your units, 1 centimeter cubed would go on top, would have a mass of 7.52 grams. So x times 1 would just be x, and then now I know I need to multiply those. So if you're ever having trouble, just think whenever we're comparing, we could set up a proportion, and that's going to be a clue whether we multiply or divide our numbers. In this case, we multiply. So 652.8 times 7.52 tells us that the mass of this particular rod of iron is 4,909.056 grams. That's it. So a lot of these problems are going to have a few steps, but remember that we first need to figure out what's our shape and are we looking for surface area or volume. So taking a look, it says if 1 guppy requires 5 liters of water to live happily. You can't put a really big fish in a small tank. It's not going to live happily. It's not going to be able to get the nutrients that it needs. So 1 guppy requires 5 liters of water to live happily. What is the maximum number of guppies that should be kept in this aquarium? So if we look at this shape, rectangular prism, but now I need to figure out if I'm trying to determine the amount of water a fish needs to live, would that be volume or would that be surface area? I want you to think for a minute. Hopefully you figured out volume. So volume of a rectangular prism is capital BH. I'm going to use this as my base again. So rectangular prism, my base is a rectangle. So to find capital B, to find the area of the base, which is a rectangle, I'm just going to multiply those numbers that I see on the bottom. So 30 times 40, which would be 3 times 4, that would be 1,200. So back over here, I know that the area of the base is 1,200, and I know that the distance from bottom to top is 30, which would make the volume of this tank 36,000 centimeters cubed. Okay, now the question says how many guppies am I going to keep in this aquarium? And one guppy requires 5 liters of water. So we don't have the same units here because I found centimeters cubed and this problem talks about liters. So 1,000 centimeters cubed is 1 liter. And that's not something that I would expect you to know. That's something that would typically be provided to you in a problem like this. Like on the previous problem, they told us what 1 centimeter cubed was and the mass of it. So for this particular problem, 1,000 centimeters cubed is 1 liter. So once again, if you're not sure whether to divide or multiply, we can go ahead and set up a proportion. So 36,000, I don't know how many liters that is. That's my X. Well, I know that 1,000, remember I'm matching my unit, so centimeters cubed is going on top. 1,000 centimeters cubed would be 1 liter. So when I go to cross multiply, X times 1,000 equals 36,000. This is a problem where I would divide. So I wouldn't multiply to figure out the liters, I would end up dividing. So 36,000 divided by 1,000 is pretty much just take out all of those zeros. So X would equal 36. So I have 36 liters in this aquarium. So I had to use the volume and then convert from centimeters cubed to liters. So I have 36 liters in this aquarium. Now, a lot of these word problems we need to be very careful whenever we're reading because the question didn't ask us for how much does the aquarium contain, how many liters does it have, and wants to know how many guppies could we put into it. So if I can have 1 guppy requires 5 liters of water, I'm going to do 36 divided by 5 because 1 guppy requires 5 liters of water and I want to know how many guppies I can fit. So 36 divided by 5 would be 7.2. Okay, now 7.2 guppies, that I can't have 7.2 guppies. I can't have 0.2 of a guppy. And if I round up to 8 fish, well then they're not going to have enough because 8 times 5, I need 40 liters in that tank. So this is a problem where I wouldn't round up, I would actually round down. So I would need 7 guppies, or 7 guppies could successfully live in this aquarium. And that's it. So a lot of times with these word problems, like we said, they require quite a few steps. But if nothing else, you can always start out by figuring out what's the shape, surface area, or volume, and then going from there. Now, sometimes they're a little bit simpler. This one says straight up, what is the volume, what is the surface area, and it talks about a soft drink can. So this is one where you just have to think, what shape is a soft drink can? Well, that would be a cylinder. And then just figuring out what formulas would you use? Like, what's the volume? Well, volume of a cylinder would be capital B H. What's the surface area? Well, surface area of a cylinder, if we go look on our formula chart, would be 2 pi RH plus 2 pi R squared. Now, I don't actually want to solve this one, but I do want to talk about what are some different options that they could say. Instead of volume, they could say like how much soda. They could say like how much liquid could we fit in this can, right? They wouldn't say volume, but they might say how much soda can we fit in this can? How much liquid can we fit in this can? Like how much soda does this container contain? And all of that would be volume. For surface area, they might ask you like how much aluminum do we need? And that would be total. So like how much aluminum do we need to make this? That would be total. But if they asked about the label, well, be careful there. Because if they want to know what's the surface area of the label or where are we going to put the Sprite decal or the Coca-Cola decal, label would be lateral surface area. And that would just be 2 pi RH. So with word problems, I always need to be really careful whenever I'm reading by figuring out what's the shape And then looking at the language, when it said surface area, it just means total. But if it had said, what's the label, what's the area of the label, that would be lateral. We're going to skip solving that one. We're going to continue going through some other problems. We might not solve all of these, but we are going to talk these out. So number 4 says that the excavation for a house and the trucks to carry away the material have the dimensions shown about how many level truckloads are necessary to remove all the dirt. So I'm going to give you a second to think. Would this be surface area or would this be volume? And what shape do we have? Well, this would be volume if we're carrying dirt out. So I would have to find the volume of the house, which if we look at that, that's a rectangular prism. So volume would equal capital BH. And then it says level truckloads, meaning that I'm not going to like tower over that. I'm just going to keep it that specific shape, which is also a rectangular prism. So I need to find the volume of that rectangular prism as well. Now, once you've figured out the shape, once you figured out volume, you could find the volume of each piece. But then how would we figure out our answer? Well, to figure out the loads that it would take, so all of the trips that it would take, I would really need to figure out what's the volume of the house and then divide it by the number of truckloads. So I'm making up numbers, but if the volume of the house is 100 meters cubed and a truck could only carry 5 meters cubed, well then I would do 100 divided by 5 and that would tell me how many loads. So for this particular problem, we're not going to solve it all the way out, but be aware that if you just found the volume, you wouldn't have the answer. To find the number of loads, it would be the volume of the house divided by the volume of the truck. So you'd have to find the volume of each one and then divide them to tell you the number of loads. So we're going to talk through this next one as well. So we have a silo that's shown at the right, and it's to be built from metal. The top portion of the silo is a cylinder. And then the bottom part is a cone. And then it does tell us that there is this circular opening. So that's how we're going to get our like material or whatever we're storing inside, was we need an opening at the top of the silo. So we have 2 questions. One says A, how much metal is required to build the silo? So if we're building this from metal, well, we're not like filling it in with metal, then how are we supposed to put anything inside? So how much metal is required to build the silo? I'm going to give you a minute to think. Would that be surface area or volume? Well, that would be surface area. And then how much material can the silo hold? Material hold, that would be volume. Now, volume would be a little bit easier than surface area for this particular problem because the silo can hold whatever the cylinder can hold plus whatever the cone can hold. So, to find the volume of the silo, I would need to find the volume of the cylinder plus the volume of the cone. So if we go look at our formula chart, to find the volume of a cylinder, that would be capital BH. To find the volume of a cone, that would be 1/3 BH. And B would be the same. B stands for area of the base. Well, the cylinder and the cone both have the same base, which is a circle. So to find capital B, I would just do pi r squared. And then that would be it. And if you want extra practice, if you want to actually go and solve all of this out, mad props to you. Not in terms of pi, the volume total should be 109.95 meters cubed. That means that you actually type pi in whenever you're solving it. But that's how we would find the volume of the silo. Now, to figure out the surface area of the silo, I need to be careful. Because if I find out the total for the cylinder, I'm going to find the bases, which means I'm going to include those parts, and I don't want to include those parts. Like that has a hole, and then this part right here is not even on the surface. So to find the surface area, I'm going to have to break this down. So first, if I find this part right here, that's the cylinder, the surface area of that part would just be the wraparound, which would be lateral of a cylinder, which is 2 pi RH. So that's the lateral part of the cylinder. Okay, well, so that would be that part. Well, then I have the cone, I have like the other part of the silo. So if I do total for a cone, once again, I'm going to include the base. If I do total for the cone, I'm going to include that part which is not on the surface. So I don't want that part. I would really just want that wraparound. So once again, lateral for a cone. And that formula would be pi RL. So now I have to think through, is there anything that I'm forgetting? So I determined that I needed lateral for the cylinder and that I needed lateral for the cone, but is there any part that I'm forgetting that I need some metal there? Well, I need metal for the top, but I have a hole in it, which means that I need to figure out how much metal would I need for all of it, and then I need to subtract out the hole. And if we think, what are those shapes? Well, to get the base, that would be a circle, so that would be area is pi r squared of the big circle, but then I would need to subtract out the little circle. And then that would tell me the surface area of the silo. So I would need to find like the wraparound of the cylinder, the wraparound of the cone, and then I would need to figure out the whole circle on top and then subtract out the little circle. And if you do all of that, if you want to do that for extra practice, not in terms of pi, which means type pi into the calculator, you get 131.16 meters squared. So we're not actually going to solve those out. I just kind of wanted to talk through some word problems. But hopefully you have a much better grasp on if it's surface area or volume. And that's it for today. See you next time.